Brett, tell us a little bit about your early experiences, just when you were at school and then thereafter in your first couple of companies that you started up, and what you learned from those experiences that led you to have such a deep and abiding commitment to cultivating an organization, a culture that is really the centerpiece, I would say, of your incredible growth and success.
So, I graduated from Wharton. I was pretty young, at 26, with my MBA, and I had started 4 businesses while I was at school. That's what I wrote my application essays about. It's what I always wanted to do, was be an entrepreneur. And that process of writing my essays for Wharton was a journey inside myself. It was a very reflective process. So I kind of came out of the gate swinging, raised a lot of money for my first real large-scale business, which was Core Metrics, where we raised over $100 million in VC capital. And we did that in the middle of the dot-com boom, and we had many dot-com clients, and we ended up losing most of those clients in the dot-com bust and having an unsustainable cost structure, which was very unfortunate. And I felt like was a failure on my behalf as a leader, because we had done so many things right with culture, but we had missed the one thing that matters the most, and that's a focus on performance. A corporation has to make a profit to be sustaining. A family can't run their lives where they spend all of their income and go into debt. Eventually they'll hit a wall. And we hit that wall, and we had to reinvent ourselves as a profitable company, and that transformation took 5 years. And unfortunately, during that transformation, we didn't focus on culture as much as we should, and I learned a lot of very painful lessons from that. We saw major retention issues. We saw
people left.
Right. We saw major
why did they leave?
Because there's a lot of reasons, but we didn't focus on it as an executive team. Like, one of the things at Bazaarvoice is every quarter when we do our offsite strategy meeting as an executive team, 3 to 4 hours of our 2-day agenda is just talking about culture. That's very unique, that we spend 3 to 4, 20 to 25% of the time just talking about culture.
So like in the last one, in quarter one of 2009, can you tell us what the subject was there that you addressed with respect to the culture of the company?
Sure. One of the things we talked about is we have a process in the company where staff rates management on the 5 stars of our culture. So one way for us to
live... What are those 5 stars? Let's make sure we get those out here.
Sure. Passion, execution, excellence, teamwork, and openness. And every manager, every executive, myself as the CEO, is rated by staff on a 1 to 5 star scale on whether or not we're living the culture: passion, execution, excellence, teamwork, openness.
Correct me about this, or just clarify. Everyone gets rated on the 5 stars of the culture?
So only managers get rated, managers and executives, and I also get rated. And it's pretty radical because it does happen every quarter. And think about the fact that that every quarter people are forced to reflect on whether or not that manager is living the culture, living those 5 stars: passion, execution, excellence, teamwork, and openness. And that creates this accountability in the system where, A, it's reinforcing the importance of focusing on living the culture.
Because everybody's thinking about what does it look like, what should it look like.
And, we could do it for everybody. The reason we don't do it for everybody is that managers set the tone. Right. If the manager's not setting the right tone, then forget it. The employee's not going to set the right tone at that point. And you do see these pockets of weaknesses. So circling back to a question you asked me earlier, like at the last offsite, we spent a lot of time talking about the junior managers in the company that were getting low ratings and whether or not they were going to be able to transform into leaders, and what we needed to get them to transform into very impactful leaders in the company. What training we needed to provide, what formal training we have $1,000 for every employee every year to use on whatever training they want, how to direct them in that way, decisions to make, and we came out with some pretty big reorganizations of departments, but that's pretty standard for us, that we're constantly changing the landscape and evolving it to be very performance focused.
So this is on people's minds on a regular basis. My own evaluation by people who are reporting to me, as well as people throughout the organization rating their managers on whether the values are indeed embodied. So that helps to explain why there would be such a great focus on it. What is it that you learned at Core Metrics and your earlier experiences that brought you to this this almost religious commitment to the importance of spending so much of your time and attention on this aspect of your business?
Well, at Core Metrics, we had a cultural statement. I can't tell you what it is because...
Well, that's telling.
Right. Because we put it down at the beginning of the company, and we had no process to reinforce it. We did a yearly feedback at best. There were some years where, frankly, we punted on it because we felt so busy, and we just didn't prioritize it. And then as an executive team in our offsites, we didn't focus on culture. We didn't set that as an agenda item. And I think it's unnatural to do that. I really do. I mean, when I go out and I speak to fellow CEOs out there and I ask them, do they make the time? Everybody says culture is important. Right. Everybody's got this statement. But do they actually make the time with their executive team to sit down and discuss it openly? And the answer 99% of the time is no.
Or build it into real feedback that they get that is relatively unfiltered. Sounds like people get that on a persistent basis.
Right. And so people watching me speaking on your website are going to say, you know, he's starstruck and he's wasting his time. But I can tell you that...
Why are they wrong, Brett?
I can tell you that spending that time, there is nothing more important than the culture of your company. And in culture, it's focused very much on performance, right? It's focused very much on, is this company set up to win? Not just what your benefits are, not just what your feedback process is.
Right.
How do you hire? How do you fire? How do you assess? How do you train? All of those things are ultimately what determine if you'll win. Now, if you're a small hedge fund with 5 people and they're all 5 individual contributors and they're managing $300 million in money, then maybe that's all you need, right? Maybe you don't need to focus on some of the things I'm talking about. But if you're going to build a large-scale, high-impact company that has many employees, you know, maybe is globally distributed like we are, then these are very important principles to get into the DNA of your company, into the DNA of your employees, your managers, et cetera. Because at the end of the day, it is the people that's going to make the company successful.
Well, you hear that a lot, of course.
Of course. Everybody says that.
Everybody says that. And there's skepticism about that. And you just said that it's the most important thing you can be focusing on. It's the most important thing. More than your products and your brilliant and genius service that you provide to so many great companies around the world now?
Well, who's going to invent your products? Those are people. Who's going to defend when competition enters your space? Those are people. If you create up an environment where people feel as close to his family as they can feel. I'll never love Bazaarvoice as much as I love my wife and daughter, nor should I be expected to, right? But if I love it a lot and I spend 80% of my waking time doing that, and everybody else in the company spends 80% of their waking time doing that, you better create meaning in it, and you better have fun doing it. And I'm happy to say I have a blast, and our employees have a blast. We have such a tight-knit culture, and it's built to win. And so in the face of competition, I almost feel sorry for our competitors that don't have that strong culture, because our team is so smart and so quick and so fast to react because they're protecting it. They're protecting that environment. You know, you look at a Google, for example, versus a Yahoo. And I said 3 years ago, Google's going to win on the basis of they have a stronger culture than Yahoo alone. And I base that on the fact that when I talked with Google employees or visited Google's, I could tell they were passionate, I could tell they were engaged. And when I visited Yahoo or I talked with Yahoo employees, I was usually being asked if I have a job for them. And I could just tell, just based on that interaction, that this was a culture built to win and would continue to rally in the face of adversity. And this was a culture where people were worried about their jobs and worried about winning, right? And didn't have the environment set up for success. So it didn't matter if they had an advantage in the past. That advantage was very quickly being lost to this company, which was the upstart emerging as the leader.